Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Tanama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. We're continuing on with beginner's Sanskrit, and we're going to be looking at lesson number 6 of, again, his Sanskrit course. Up until now, we've learned some different. We've learned the present tense, present continuous tense, or present tense, simple present tense for verbs, and we've also learned a little bit about nouns. We've learned some endings. We've learned nominative case ending for subjects in sentences. We've learned the accusative case, which is used for the direct object of in sentences. We've learned the instrumental case, which is used when we want to say by. Also, the accusative case is used for motion towards. If we say to with the idea of motion towards. We've learned the instrumental case, which is with or by or with. We've also learned we've learned the dative case, which means for or for the benefit of, or to in a sense which doesn't mean motion towards. So if we say obeisances to Krishna, that doesn't involve motion towards, so that's also there. So nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative. So 4 cases so far, and now we're going to learn a couple more cases. The next cases we're going to learn are ablative and genitive. Okay, so let's have a look at again. Lesson 6. He covers how vowels are formed when they follow consonants. So those of you who don't know Devanagari, go and learn Devanagari, because we're not going to cover that part here. But basically what he's going to be teaching is in Sanskrit, when vowels are the initial letters of words in Devanagari script, they have a different form, an initial form, than when they come after consonants. When they come after consonants, they merge with the consonants and they have a different form, which is called a secondary form or medial form. Okay, so that's what he's going to be teaching today in Devanagari script, but please go learn Devanagari script in some other way, because we're not teaching Devanagari script here. We're assuming that everybody who is watching this knows Devanagari script, even though a lot of the lesson is going to be conducted in Roman script or English letter script with diacritic marks. Still, if you want to learn Devanagari script, go and learn Devanagari script. Sanskrit can be written in many different scripts, but the most common is Devanagari script. So a lot of people who learn Sanskrit learn Devanagari script. Many linguists who don't care about actually reading Sanskrit works and things like that, who just want to get an idea of the grammar of the language, never bother learning Devanagari script. They just want to know the grammar, and therefore the grammar is separate from the script. So we're going to learn the ablative. Some people say ablative. Ablative is the way that I always heard it, especially when I was studying Latin. And genitive, two more cases for our nouns, case endings, and the use of the word iti, which means thus, which is used to indicate direct speech in Sanskrit, just like in English we have quote marks. Or what some people call inverted commas. So vocabulary, we're going to get some more nouns ending in a. So alphabet vowels after consonants. Words are formed by putting letters together, etc. A consonant without a vowel is short. Has to have a virama, which is a short stroke to show that no short a is attached to, is pronounced with that consonant, because a consonant needs a vowel to be pronounced. We can't say the letter K or the letter T. We have to say ka and ta, and when we say them. So if we want to just use the letter K or T, we have to put this small stroke at the bottom of the letter, which slopes down to the right, from left to right. It's called a virama. Panini has another name for it called a halanta, and that comes from the terminology, Panini terminology. Hal means a consonant, and anta means end. So the thing which ends a consonant is a halanta. Okay, so either a virama or a halanta, people will be familiar with those terminology if you've studied Devanagari, or if you know any language like Marathi or Hindi or Nepali that uses the Devanagari alphabet script, you'll be familiar with the term halanta or virama. So here he goes, and he explains how to add the simple and the vowels and the diphthongs, which are the complex vowels, to the different consonants. Okay, so he gives some examples here. You can note, anybody who's new to Devanagari script, you can note that the letter ra, right? In Sanskrit, if we want to say a letter, we say kara. Kara means a sign. It also means hand, because we use our hand to make different signs. So kara means, the word kara in Sanskrit means a sign or a hand. So if I want to say the sign, the Devanagari sign or the letter for T or K or whatever it is, I will say takara or kakara. Takara for T, kakara for K, if I want to say that letter or that sign. The only exception to this is the letter R. The letter R is not called rakara, but it is called repa. Repa. R-E-P-H-A. So repa has some different forms. When we write it with a short U, it looks like this. When we write with a long U, it looks like this. And there's also another one that he suggests that you learn, is how to add the vocalic re, right? The vowel re, which is not got anything to do with the letter R, repa, but the re, when you want to add re to hakara, which is the aspirate breath sound in the alphabet, comes at the end of the alphabet, last letter of the alphabet. Then it looks like this. Okay, so enough about Devanagari script. We learn how to do that, how to put letters together, how to put down. So we learn their initial and medial vowels, different signs for them. There are also consonants. When we want to show a consonant without a vowel, we have to put a virama or a halanta on it. If we want to add vowels to consonants and make up words, then there's medial forms of the verb of the vowels which are added to the consonants, and thus we make different Devanagari words and made up of letters. We're also going to cover later on, after you learn the Sanskrit alphabet up to this point, the Devanagari alphabet up to this point, then you're going to learn conjunct consonants, where two consonants can come together, and when they're added together without an intervening vowel, they sometimes take different forms, or they in fact always take different forms, and sometimes very different forms. So those things have to be learned when learning Devanagari script. If anybody wants to learn Devanagari script, one good PDF, one good book is a book by Professor Wickner of South Africa that's available on the internet freely. If you want it, you can email me at the address on the end of this video for those persons watching YouTube. Okay, so now we come to the grammar section. In the grammar section, we are now going to learn about ablative, which is called panchami, and genitive, which is called shasti. Okay, so we prefer to use always the English terminology for grammar, but we should also know the Sanskrit terminology, because when we're in India or when we're talking to people who are more familiar with Indian languages or Indian grammatical terminology, they may use the Indian terminology, and we have to know how to understand that. Okay, so far with nouns, we learned different endings for nouns, different case endings. Verbs, we have conjugations, conjugational endings, right? And with nouns, we have declensional endings. So we're learning how to decline the nouns that we've learned, A ending masculine nouns, short A ending masculine nouns, which in Sanskrit are called akaranta pumlinga. Akara, akara, right? Short A, anta, akaranta, pumlinga. Pumlinga means gender. Pumlinga means masculine gender. Akaranta pumlinga, shabdas. Shabda means words or nouns. It could also mean sound, but in this case, in grammar, it means a noun. Okay, so now we've learned four cases so far, 4 case endings in 3 numbers, singular, dual, and plural. So we've learned nominative, singular, dual, and plural, accusative, singular, dual, and plural, right? Instrumental, singular, dual, and plural, and dative, singular, dual, and plural, right? So that means we've learned 12 case endings for nouns. Okay, now we're going to, so the first one, nominative, is usually called pratama. Pratama means first. There are 2 types of numbers in every language. There are what we call cardinals and ordinals. So a cardinal number is like 1, 2, 3, 4. An ordinal number is like first, second, third, fourth. So you can easily remember the difference if you just simply remember ordinal is the order that somebody, imagine people running a race, right? What is the order that they win the race? First, second, third, fourth. Those are ordinal numbers. Regular numbers, like if you were counting normally, are called cardinal numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, cardinal. First, second, third, fourth, ordinal. So we name the cases in Sanskrit as first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, like this. We name them that in Sanskrit. So the word here for ablative, because it's the 5th case, after nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative comes ablative, a 5th. The 5th case, therefore it is called panchami. What does panchami mean? Panchami means the 5th. We probably are used to reading a Sanskrit calendar or hearing about a date, right? And we would say something comes on Panchami. Panchami is the 5th day of the moon, the 5th lunar day, like that. The next day after the 5th day is the 6th day. So that will be called Shasti. So similarly, the 6th case is also called Shasti. The 6th, it's just called the 6th. So ablative, Panchami, genitive, Shasti, okay? Shasti means 6th, and Panchami means 5th. Okay, these are all cases. Remember the word for cases. What are cases? Cases are noun endings. Okay, so noun endings are called cases, and they're called vibhaktis. Vibhakti is noun cases. That's the Sanskrit word. All right, so let's get and see what they're actually about. The ablative is used for origin or source. So that means it can be translated usually. It usually means from. From. It is also used for comparison. For example, here we have examples of an example. Now, as usual, we're not going to look at the examples with Sandhi, but we're going to examine the examples without Sandhi. By this, I mean, we're going to look at the lines that do not have brackets around them. The ones that have brackets around them are more advanced because some letters at the end of or the beginning of the next word, at the end of the first word or the beginning of the next word, will be changed because of some Sandhi rules, which we haven't gone over yet. So forget about the Sandhi rules. the messages in brackets, we're going to look at the first thing. So here's the first sentence here. Gajat agachati. Now, we know agachati already, right? Gachati comes from the verb gum, the root gum. Gach is the stem, and we add ati to it in the third person singular. So gachati means he, she, or it goes. Agachati, when we put an a in front of it like that, agachati, right? It's a different meaning. It means come instead of go. Gachati to go. Agachati means to come, right? So now we have this other word, gajat. Gajat is singular of ablative case, right? Ablative singular. So gajat, the word gaja is an elephant. So gajat is ablative singular of elephant. He comes from the elephant. He comes from the elephant. Okay. Another example he gives in English here, he gives some other examples. One learns from practice. From practice would be put into the ablative. From the elephant is put into the ablative. He is taller than she. What is happening is when we don't say he is taller from she, but he is taller than she. He compared to she, he is taller. So when we use a word in a sentence and we're comparing that thing to the subject of the sentence. If we're using comparison, right? Or I'm not sure, maybe even comparing it to the object. If comparison is used, right, with that word, then we use the ablative case. So here, he's translated the ablative as he is taller than she, right? So the genitive now. The genitive is used for possession or ownership. So, for instance, in English, we would say something like, I could say, Kesheva's book. If I say Kesheva's book, I add an apostrophe S to Kesheva, and it shows possession that Kesheva owns the book. Kesheva's book, like that. Another way of doing it in English is I can say the book of Kesheva. If I say the book of, right? If I add of to the noun book, then it shows that I possess the book, or Kesheva possesses the book. Okay, so there are a couple of different ways to do genitive, to do possession, to show possession in English. In Sanskrit, it's shown by the genitive case. Here's our example sentence. Narasya ashvaha. Ashvaha means a horse, right? Narasya, Nara means a man. So Narasya is the genitive singular of man. Narasya ashvaha. So ashvaha is in the nominative singular. So we know that ashvaha, right, is the subject of this utterance here, right? Ashvaha is the subject of this utterance. Narasya means of the man, right? So the translation is, right, the horse of the man. The horse of the man. We could also translate it into English as the man's horse. The man's horse, right? Or we could translate it as the horse is of the man. The horse is of the man, right? Which doesn't sound very correct in English, but anyway, the verb to be can be understood in here. Okay, so genitive is also always used in relation to the noun which follows it. Noun which follows it. So if we see a noun in a genitive, we should look to the next noun that follows it in sentence order, and we should understand that narasya, because it's very closely followed by ashvaha, right? It is pertaining to that next noun. Okay, so let's see some more examples. Ramasya putraha. Putraha means son. It's in the nominative singular. So it's a subject of this utterance, right? We can call it a sentence if we understand the verb. There's a verb, the verb to be there, right? So, okay. So then Ramasya is genitive singular of Rama. Rama is the name of Lord Ramachandra. So Ramasya putraha means the son, putraha, Ramasya, of Rama, or Rama's son. Ramasya putraha. Okay. Amritasya putraha. Putraha. Amritasya putraha. Okay, so putraha is the nominative plural, right? Here we have plural, nominative plural of putra, which means sons, right? And amritasya, amrita means no death or immortality. Amrita. Mrita means death. Amrita means immortality. So amritasya is the genitive singular of amrita. So amritasya putraha is the sons of immortality. Or we could also say the immortality sons. Right, in English. The genitive is sometimes used as a substitute for other cases, such as dative, instrumental, ablative, or locative. Okay, so that's a little bit confusing. So we'll just keep that in the back of our minds. And it means that sometimes we can see the genitive is used for other reasons. Okay, but normally, and in the beginning, we'll be understanding that the genitive means possession, right? So do we know some of these other cases that the genitive can be used to substitute for, right? It can also sometimes substitute for the dative. What was the dative? The dative was to or for, but not to in the sense of motion towards, but to Krishna or for Krishna, right? The instrumental is by or with, right? So that would be, so the dative would be Krishnasya, right? The instrumental would be Krishnena, right? So Krishnena could be by Krishna or with Krishna, right? So we've learned that. The dative is the fourth case. The instrumental is the third case. The ablative is, we just learned it, the ablative is the fifth case, right? So it can also mean, what does the fifth case mean again? Let's have a look again quickly. The fifth case means from or comparison, right? So it seems like genitive can also be used for from or comparison. So what would that be? That would be Krishnat, from Krishna or compared to Krishna, right? Right. And then locative. We haven't learned locative yet. Locative, if you want to remember what locative is about, think of location. Locative means location. So it means in or at, right? If you know, I am in Delhi, or I am at the house, right? So in or at, right? In or at means locative, location, like that. Okay, so sometimes genitive is used for those also, but we'll just keep that aside. Just remember that these are exceptional cases. In general, 99% of the time when you see the genitive, it involves possession. Okay, all right. So let's have a look at how the genitive and how the ablative and genitive, the Panchami and Shasti cases, or vibhaktis, are formed. So let's take here he's taken the word Nara. Nara means a man. It's an A ending masculine noun, Nara, right? And so he gives the formation of the cases. As usual, we're going to go singular. We're going to go ablative, singular, dual, and plural. Then we're going to go genitive, singular, dual, and plural in the way we say it, in the way we recite it, in the way we learn it. Narat, narabhyam, narebhyaha, narasya, narayoho, naranam, right? So now, a special note about naranam, he's put a little asterisk here, and he said, like see Gajanam and Balanam, right? On page 46. Okay, so there was a rule, I'm pretty sure that we covered this rule, that that there's a certain type of sandhi that if we have an R, the letter R coming in the word before an N, a dental N, right, a regular N, then that changes The actual rule in Panini is Rasha Ridvaya Vyunashana. So it means that this N, this dental N, changes to a cerebral N, an N with a dot under it, if it is preceded in any way in the word by an R or a re, right? A vocalic re or re, or the letter R, which we call Rafa. If those letters come before, in a word, then it changes that dental N to a cerebral N. So we just put a little dot underneath like that. So we have to know that. But so you can see that in Naranam, the N has got a dot under it. So it's a cerebral N. Whereas in Gajanam and Balanam, the same ending's added. Anam is the ending, a plural genitive ending, but it doesn't change the N from a dental N to a cerebral N. They stay the same because prior to that in the word, there is no vocalic R, re or re, and no Rafa, no letter R, consonant R. Okay, so that's just an aside. Okay, so now we know, and let's have a look. All the cases that we've learned so far for the A ending masculine noun nara, man, we can go through. So if we start with the nominative or the pratama, right? Nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, and genitive. Here they are in order: naraha, narao, naraha, naram, narao, naran, narena, narabhyam, narahi, naraya, narabhyam, narebhyaha. And now we get narasya, narayoho, narana. Right? So that's we've declined that up to the sixth case there. So naraha, narao, naraha, nominative, naram, narao, naran, accusative, narena, narabhyam, narahi, right? Instrumental, narasya, naras, naraha, narao, naraha, naram, narao, naran, narena, narabhyam, narahi, naraya, narabhyam, narebhyaha, dative, naraya, narabhyam, narebhyaha, narat. Now we come to ablative. Narat, narabhyam, narebhyaha, and genitive, narasya, narayoho, narana. Okay, so now we know like that. So everybody needs to learn all their nouns. They need to know how to decline the nouns. Yeah, do we have a question?
Swami? Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so therefore in the ablative, you can get it mixed up with the case before, which is the dative, isn't it? Because you have narabhyam again.
Yes,
and then
narabhyam comes again. So again, so we're going to go naraha, narao, naraha. That's different. Naram, narao, naran. So dual accusative, nominative and accusative is the same, right? Then narena, narabhyam, narahi, naraya, narabhyam, narebhyaha, narat, narabhyam, narebhyaha. So we have three. The instrumental, the dative, and the ablative dual are all the same, right? And we have also the plural. Can we just yeah. So we'll see that. We'll see which ones are the same a little later on. Okay. So
the other question I wanted to ask was about you said the Rafa. So this cerebral na, it's only with the Rafa. We don't do it for re. That's what you said, right? Just wanted to make sure that's clear in my mind.
No, re. The vocalic R is also the sutra in Panini says re. If re comes before, then it changes it also. Re or ra. Re or ra. Okay. Yeah. So now we're gonna learn the use of the word et. So et is an indeclinable. It's an important particle, right? It's called a particle in English. So is used at the end of a quotation. At the end of a quotation means direct speech. When direct speech is involved, we will simply say the direct speech, and then we'll put et at the end to show that it's direct speech. So you can see here the example. Ashvaha gachati iti Ramaha vadati. Right? So Ashvaha gachati iti Ramaha vadati. Right? Means, right? Ashvaha is nominative singular of horse. Right? Gachati is third person singular, present tense of gachati, to go. Right? Iti means thus. Ramaha is nominative singular of Rama. Right? And vadati is third person singular present tense of vad to speak. So what it means is the horse goes. The horse goes, right? Is what Ashvaha Gachati means. Right? If we put iti after it, then when we translate it, we put inverted commas or quote marks around that part of the utterance. That is the direct speech, right? So the horse goes, says Rama. So Rama vadati means Rama says. So Rama says, the horse goes, right? So in English, we have direct speech and indirect speech. So we can translate this in two ways. In English, we could translate, if we translate it as direct speech, we can put the quote marks and say, the horse goes, says Rama. Or Rama says, the horse goes, when we put the horse goes in quotes, right? So this is the actual words that Rama said, the horse goes. If we wanted to put it into indirect speech in English, we would say, Rama says that the horse goes. Rama says that the horse goes. And then we wouldn't need to put those quote marks. Okay, so don't get confused about that. There's a few different ways that we can translate this into English. But in essence, when we see the word iti, whatever came before it, right? Maybe it's a whole sloka that came before it. Maybe it's a whole lot of things that came before it. It shows that it should be direct speech. For those of you who are looking at my Hari Bhakti Vilas class or my class on different things like that, if we go through and we see a sloka or a verse, and at the end of that verse comes iti, it means that verse should be chanted out loud. So if we're looking at a prayoga, if we're doing any sort of a ritual, or if we're reading any text in Sanskrit, and we see the word iti, it indicates to us that what came before it is to be said out loud, or is direct speech. Okay? So notice that iti is a convenient point to break the sentence down into smaller parts, more manageable parts. Right. So here in this example, we actually have two sentences that can stand by themselves. Ramaha vadati is a simple sentence that can stand by itself. It has a subject, Ramaha. It has a noun. It has a verb, vadati. So Ramaha vadati by itself just means Rama speaks. And that's a simple sentence. Now, we can add all sorts of things to that sentence. And we can make it, Rama speaks to Sita, about Lakshman, right? We can make that whole sentence. Then we can say, what does Rama speak? And the direct quote, Rama can say, the deer goes or the horse goes, as we have here, the horse goes, or in the Ramayana, the deer goes. So Rama says to Sita about Lakshman, he is to protect you. So so we separate those two things. So we have two different separate sections to the sentence here, right? Which in English we would call them different clauses. But they could also stand as their primary clauses. So they can also stand by themselves as separate sentences, right? Because we could say Ashvaha gachati, the horse goes. That's a sentence all by itself. Rama havadati, Rama speaks. That's a sentence by itself. When we put them together, so in a sense, we're relating them to each other with the word iti. Iti is telling us who is doing the speaking and what is being spoken, right? So what is being spoken comes before et, and then who is doing the speaking comes after et, like that. Okay. So notice that et is a convenient place to break the sentence down into smaller and more manageable parts, right? So remember that that we shouldn't get mixed up and we shouldn't think, okay, in Sanskrit, there's no strict, there's a few rules of word order that we've understood, but in general, there's no real strict word order like there is in English. So we shouldn't get confused and think in this sentence we can use the word Rama with Gachati or the word Ashvaha with Vadati, right? We can't do that, right? Because of this word et shows us that these are separate sentences. One is the utterance, one is the direct speech, and one is the person who speaks the direct speech. Okay, so when translating from English to Sanskrit, indirect quotations must first be turned into direct quotations before et is used. Okay, so remember I said I gave you an example of indirect speech, right? Indirect speech would be, in this example, we say, the horse goes, says Rama, or Rama says the horse goes. This is direct speech in English. If I want to make it into indirect speech, I say, Rama says that the horse goes. Then I don't need to put quote marks, right? That's called indirect speech. So if I see an exercise coming up that says, Rama says that the horse goes, if I want to change that into Sanskrit, I first have to change the English indirect speech into direct speech, right? So it's a good idea to get into practice. This will be part of parsing. We will first, when we're translating from Sanskrit into English, first thing we do is we parse it. We understand what case endings and what verbal endings have to go on the words when we turn them into Sanskrit, right? So we'll understand if we see the first thing that we have to do, if we see something in indirect speech and we want to turn it into direct speech in Sanskrit, we have to first of all parse it. So if we see translate in a translation exercise, Rama says that the horse goes. First thing we have to do, the first parsing we have to do is we have to change that indirect speech into direct speech. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So now, when translating from English to Sanskrit, indirect quotations must be first turned into direct quotations before you can use et. Of course, there are other ways of saying it in Sanskrit, but we don't know them yet. So if we want to take some indirect speech and translate it into Sanskrit, we have to now turn it into direct speech, because now the only way we know to show speech, either direct or indirect in English, when we put it into Sanskrit, is with this et now. So it must first be turned into direct quotations before et can be used. For example, he says that he is going. He says that he is going. Right. The person is actually saying to the other person, I'm going, bye. He's saying, I'm going. So his actual words are, I'm going. Right? But if we want to say that, if we want to write that in a story in English, we say, he says that he is going. Or he said that he is going. Right? To explain it to somebody else. That's indirect quotation. Now, we first of all have to change that now. If we want to translate that into Sanskrit using et, right, we have to change that to, I am going, he says. Or, he said, I am going. And we have to put I am going in quote marks to show that the actual words that the person said is I'm going. Before he left, he said, I'm going. Right. What would that be in Sanskrit using the word et to show direct speech? That would be very simply, right? Gachami iti vadati. Right. So we know that the thing being spoken has et after it. The thing coming before et is the thing which is the direct speech. Right? So gachami is the thing that the person actually spoke. I am going. Gachami means I am going. It's first person, singular, of the verb to go. Right. Gachami. Gachami iti, thus, right? Vadati. Vadati means third person singular, present tense, of vad, to speak. Means he, she, or it speaks or says. So he says, quote, unquote, I am going. Or I am going, quote, unquote, he says. Right? So that's the way we translate it into English. And so if we're translating from English to Sanskrit, first of all, from indirect quotation, from an indirect quote, right, not using inverted commas, we have to turn it into a quote that uses inverted commas in English, which means a direct quotation of what the person actually said, right, before we put it into Sanskrit when we're using ET, right? Notice that the change from an indirect quotation to a direct quotation changes the clause from he is going to I am going. Did you notice that? Right? So this is where people get mixed up. They look and they see an exercise and it says he is going. And they think, okay, he says is vadati, third person singular. He is going, right, is also third person singular. So I should therefore say gachati. So I should say vadati gachati, right? Vadati gachati. That means, right, and we could put a cha in there, and we could those are two sentences. We could conjoin them. We could put them together with cha. We could say vadati cha gachati cha, or we could say vadati gachati cha, and that would mean he says and he is going. But that's not what the exercise is. The exercise is to translate he says that he is going. Right? So people get confused when they look at this sentence, this first indirect quotation, and they think going, the verb to go, has to be in the third person singular. No. If it's a direct speech, it has to be in the first person singular. Right? Because the person, he, is saying that himself. So what he's saying, he's not saying, if I'm leaving the room, I don't say he is going. I say I am going. So it has to be changed. So that's what he's saying. We should be very careful when we parse these things, because we have to change them before we add the ending in order to know which ending to add, either the third person or the first person in Sanskrit, to the Sanskrit verb. We have to first of all change from indirect to direct quotation. So when we see he says that he is going, we have to first change it to say, he says, I am going. He says thus, I am going, quote unquote, I am going. So when that way we don't get it, that way we'll say gachami instead of gachati, right? I hope that's clear. Okay, that's pretty clear. All right, we'll see when you do some exercises, you'll understand more. Okay, so now we're going to get vocabulary. That's all it is for the grammar this lesson. So we have an indeclinable, atra. Atra means here. That's easy, right? Now we have the verb to come, right? The verb to come is agachati. You can just think of the verb to come as agachati, right? He's trying to explain it here. There's a square root sign here in front of gum. When you see a square root sign, which is an actual mathematical sign, but it's used in grammar to show that the word gum is the root. So sometimes we have to see verbs when we look them up in the dictionary, we have to look for the root. Usually the root is given and then the stem is given. The stem is a root that has been changed a little bit before we add the endings to it for the different tenses and moods. Okay, so if we add what's called a pratisarga if we add something before a root, it changes the root meaning. So it changes the verb meaning. So here we have the root gum, we know becomes gach. So we get gachati. Gachati means to go. If we add a long A before gum, right, agam, right, or agach, right, that means to come. So instead of going, it means coming. It's the opposite of going, coming. And this is very common that we add these different pratisargas, these different there's some things that we add before verbs, verbal stems and roots, which change the meaning of the verb. Okay? So here we have, you don't have to remember any of that. Just remember that gachati means to go and agachati means to come. Simple. Okay. So now et is an indeclinable also. Very easy. Indicates the end of a quotation. So when we see such and such, such and such, such and such, et, it means direct speech. There was a quotation. There was a direct quotation. Right. Then we have gramaha. Gramaha means a village. Gramaha means a village. Could mean a town or a village. Village. Gramaha. Now, note that long A is a verbal prefix. Right. So it's a verbal prefix, this long A, that is attached to gam or gach. Right. It changes the meaning of gachati from he goes to he comes. Good. Okay. So now we're going to come to the exercises. So please go and do the exercises, and we'll see you in the next lesson.